Hello and welcome to a Wheels Boy first take on what I'm pretty sure is the hottest day ever recorded on Earth. Those of you who have been paying attention to our channel will know that I recently had the opportunity to drive the NIO EP9, a multi-million dollar, 1,000 kilowatt, 1,300 plus horsepower electric hypercar on a racetrack. I described that as the single most exciting thing I have ever done behind the wheel of a car. But those of you who watched to the end of the video, and I'm sure you all did, will know that I opined while that car is incredible to drive, it's also $2 to $3 million. What I really wanted to experience was an affordable, engaging electric sports car for the masses. Well, the universe is with us today because we are going to get to drive this, the Leap Motors S01, a car that very well might fit the ticket perfectly. I would describe the exterior styling of the Leap S01 as somewhat polarizing, but that's not quite accurate. The reactions I've gotten when I showed this car to people have ranged from, I really don't like it, to, I kind of like it. Nobody really loves it. I put that down, first of all, to the kind of catfish or guppy-like face here. It's distinctive, but not what I would describe as beautiful. Though, having driven it for a few days now, I can say that personally, I land on the kind of like it end of the spectrum. From the side, you can see these somewhat, well, controversial proportions of the S01. You see, this car is about 20 centimeters or about, I don't know, 5 or 6 inches shorter than a Subaru BRZ. What they've done, however, is squeeze a liftback style proportions into that size of a car. And the result is, well, could be worse, could be better, I would say. Personally, when people see it, I think a lot of them have a kind of a tadpole kind of look to it. That's what many of them have said. Now, on the side, we can also see some 17-inch wheels here in a style that I think is actually quite nice. I have been spending a lot of time in electric cars with 12, 13, and on the high end, 14-inch wheels, so these are plenty big for me. Let me close this so we can get a look at the rear end styling of the S01. Personally, I think it's quite nice. It does remind me a bit, both front and rear, of some of the Japanese K-car sports cars from the 1990s and even some that exist today. It's not bad. I think the rear is probably one of my favorite parts of the design. Let me reopen this so I can show you a little bit of the space in the back. We have a nice little cargo cover here. The space itself, thanks to the lift-back styling, is actually quite impressive for a car this small. There's plenty of space, for example, for 2 soft bags for a short road trip for 2 people. Before we step inside to have a look at the interior, I want to point out one thing about this car that has been bothering me ever since I picked it up, and that is this driver's side door. The handle here is discreetly placed, and I actually think this design is quite nice. What I don't like is that opening it is a pain, because it uses a kind of fingerprint scan technology that I think is completely unnecessary. The result is that sometimes it takes several seconds to get open. Very, very annoying. The interior design of the S01 is probably one of the highlights of the car. I wouldn't describe it as especially unique or interesting, but what it is comfortable, ranging from the quality of the materials being soft touch pretty much everywhere that you can see. The 2 screens here, one for your instrument cluster, one for your main center infotainment screen, are both very well designed and easy to use. I like the UI, especially on the infotainment screen here. There is a transmission lever here with reverse neutral drive, like many electric vehicles. No park, that would be your electric parking brake right here. Other comments, surprising amount of space here in the front. We'll get to the back in a moment, and that's a different story. But having sat in it, I would describe it as at least feeling like it has more space than something like a Subaru BRZ, for example, even though it is slightly shorter than that car. I can show you what we have in terms of rear seat space. And the answer is not a whole lot. Even once you get past this black hump here between the windows, wow. Sitting here, and my feet would actually be here when the seat is in position, I would be eating my knees and hurting my neck the entire time. I literally cannot straighten it out. Now, keep in mind that I am not a big guy. I'm not a tall guy by any means. Also keep in mind that right now, the sun is beating down on my head so hard that it is so hot back here, if I stayed more than 2 more seconds, I would pass out. So I'm gonna get out. So before we start talking about how this thing drives, which is, in my opinion, the most important part of this review, I want to give you guys some context, specifically about the price. This thing costs about 120 to 160,000 RMB, which is the equivalent of around 19 to 25,000 US dollars. In theory, that would mean it would compete pretty directly, or a little bit cheaper even, than the Subaru BRZ here in the Chinese market. But it's important to know that the BRZ and the Miata, due to import taxes, are both twice as expensive as this car here in the Chinese market. Something to keep in mind when we talk about them. Now let's talk about how it drives. I'm first going to tell you a little bit about the powertrain. This has a front-mounted electric motor, so front-wheel drive, with 125 kilowatts, that's about 170 horsepower, give or take, and 250 newton meters of torque, or about 200, or a little less maybe than 200 pound-feet. Now, the way that Leap advertises the performance on this car is to talk about the 0 to 50 kilometer per hour time instead of the 0 to 100 kilometer per hour time. 50 kilometers per hour is about 30 miles per hour. And at first, I thought that was a little bit disingenuous. Everybody uses 0 to 100. Who cares about 0 to 50? But having driven it, I can say that I actually understand why they do that. In the city, 0 to 50 kilometers per hour is mostly where you live, and how you get between those two numbers is very important. In this case, you get between them quite quickly. 0 to 50 in this car is about 2.6 seconds. The official 0 to 100 time, for context, is about 6.9 seconds. That is slightly faster than the as-tested time for cars like the last-gen Subaru BRZ, though I understand the newest one is slightly quicker and it's significantly slower than a Mazda Miata. But again, within city limits where this kind of small car is mostly going to be driven, it's actually quite useful. You'll notice I'm not talking about the size of the battery or the range. This is important, or rather this information is not particularly important to me for this review. What I care about is how it drives, but we are going to put that data up on screen in the form of kind of a chart so that you guys can see that if you wish. So how it delivers power actually allows us to transition into how it handles. It's got McPherson struts up front and torsion beam in the rear, nothing particularly fancy. I think that Leap Motors doesn't really picture this as a very intense or high performance sports car. This is, you can know this based, one, on the suspension, the simplicity of the suspension, and two, on the fact that the tires, while having 17-inch wheels, are very narrow. They're really eco tires. These are not Michelin Pilot Sport 4S's or anything like that. These are eco tires. As a result, that in the combination with all of the torque that's available instantaneously means that this car's little ESP, or traction control button, is on all the time. This thing will absolutely roast the front wheels whenever you hit the gas in a turn. This actually makes it, arguably, it's a kind of fun. The other day when it rained, I turned the traction control completely off, and I had kind of a blast doing hot laps of a parking lot. That was a lot of fun. But does it deliver the kind of driving pleasure that one would expect from the most compelling entry-level sports cars, i.e. the BRZ and the Mazda Miata? No, I would say that it does not, for a few reasons. The first being, as I mentioned, the simplicity of the suspension and the tuning is definitely more towards comfort. This is supposed to be a very easy-to-use daily electric car more than it is supposed to be a real high-performance car. The other reason, as I said, is the tires. They're not really designed for that. They're too skinny. And the steering itself. Steering in a car like this is incredibly important. One of the things that struck me so much about the EP9 is the directness and feel of the steering. It was like a race car. This obviously is not a race car, nor do I expect it to be, but I'm a little disappointed at the lack of steering feel. However, the suspension, for all its simplicity, is quite, I would say, flickable. It is a tossable vehicle. It somewhat encourages you to drive a little bit more, I wouldn't want to say like a jerk, but it encourages you to accelerate from that 0 to 50 time a little bit faster than maybe a more boring electric car would. It's more interesting and more engaging to drive than other front-wheel drive electric vehicles that I have driven previously, and so I really have to give it credit for that. So, with all that said, does the Leapmotor's S01 really represent the fun-to-drive, affordable sports car for the masses that I was really hoping that it would be? The answer is, kind of. In reality, it does fall short in terms of pure driving pleasure when compared to some of the more benchmark vehicles in the segment, i.e. your Mazda Miata and your Subaru BRZ. It's also priced at half of theirs, but let's keep that in mind. It also, unfortunately, falls short of some of the more engaging front-wheel drive cars that I've driven. It is, however, more fun than any front-wheel drive electric car I have ever driven here in China, especially at this price point, and even more fun and more interesting to drive than some of the more powerful electric cars that I've driven here. So overall, I would call it a step in the right direction. All right, that's all for today. Thank you for joining us as we experiment to find out just how much a single human being can sweat in a single day. I'm going to get in the car and enjoy some air conditioning, but I'm hoping that you are going to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. You can also check us out on Instagram and Facebook, links in the description.